Will do. Thank you. Hello.
Hi, Devin.
Hi. So yeah, I'm Devin McGrath Conwell. I'm from Geek Vibes Nation, and just thank you so much for taking the time to talk. I'm really excited to talk about Master.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Devin.
Okay, well, diving right in, I'm just curious, where did the idea for this story come from? How did you come to Master?
I went to a school very similar to Ancaster, where there was this position, this title of master. And it was just a normal fact of life on the campus, and everybody had a master. And it was, yeah, that was just it was incredibly normal to a startling and unnerving degree. And
Mm.
I didn't give it too much thought until a few years after graduating, when I ran into the master of my residential college, and we had, we caught up, but I saw him. This was out in New York City, like outside of the school, and I called out to him, and his name to me includes the title master. So I called him master and his name. And in that instant, it dawned on me how bizarre it was. And I think that it took, a little bit of that distance of time and a little bit of the distance of space to really have the perspective to realize how freaking weird the whole thing was. And so I just kept on thinking about that word, that title, and all of the different definitions and meanings that could apply. And I thought, okay, I'm going to write a film called Master, and it's going to be about a Black woman who's just become a master. And so that was the beginning of the whole story.
Yeah, I mean, it really goes to show how, what you get used to in one
Yeah.
situation becomes so wild and
Yeah.
so unnerving in another.
Yeah.
Um, and I guess on that unnerving thing, something that I loved about how then you translated this from your experience to the screen is that there's this real patchwork of horror kind of genres and subgenres in there. I got some folk horror, some ghost stories, some gothic. Was that something you were working on in the script or something you found once you were on set?
I think that primarily that was something that started in the script, and it was really a fun process of writing the film, was trying to think of how are the characters haunted and what's haunting them and how is it getting manifested. And yeah, what are the ghosts? What are the apparitions? What are what's the rot and the decay and the larva that they find, and just these representations of horror in that space was a really fun process to work on.
Yeah, I can imagine. And in a sense that I guess is you could think of as horror, and I think you use here is the Scarlet Letter is also a really interesting reference point in this script, which as a former English and film major, I love to see. So I'm curious, how did the Scarlet Letter factor into this?
What's funny is I really like the origin, and it grew from there, but really the first thing that brought the Scarlet Letter into the film is so the class that Jasmine is in, that we see, that Liv, who's played by Amber Gray, Liv's seminar is called the Great American Novel, right? And so I was imagining that it's one of these, freshman year seminar that, like, you take your pick. My one that I actually went to when I was in college was The Divine and the Human in Russian Literature, and I had an amazing professor, and that was a great class. But
Yeah.
anyways, I was imagining a class like that, and I was trying to think of a book in that class that, when Liv gives the assignment, write a critical race analysis, that topic would completely baffle a student like Jasmine to how to approach it. And it was honestly almost like this joke with myself, because I tried to think back through American, literature, and think, okay, well, what's something that I can choose that would be considered part of the canon, but would also, from a certain perspective, be incredibly difficult to approach from that kind of, analysis, that analytical level. And so I thought, I was thinking Moby Dick, but then I was like, no, actually, no, not at all. There are essays and books you could write about that. Then I thought the Scarlet Letter, and you can still, like, I looked it up, and you can do a critical race analysis about the Scarlet Letter, and I'm sure there are many amazing valid papers, but also for a student like Jasmine, it cracked me up so much to think, because it's like an entirely white cast of characters,
Yeah.
and just being faced with this, with this task that she sees as impossible. And and Jasmine's intellectual integrity doesn't allow her to bullshit in the way that all the other students do. And we see her, her friend and, British classmate just be off the top of her head, list off all of the different things that she pulls in to write the essay, and she gets a B+. And to me, that also spoke to, this certain way in academia where it kind of trades on a kind of a cynical cleverness that's not necessarily completely honest or authentic.
Yeah. You putting it that way makes me really think about how Jasmine has such authenticity, which makes kind of the horror of it hit that much harder, right? I think at least for a viewer, we can see that. And running with that, something aesthetically that I really loved that you did is you seem to be playing with light a lot. And, the really creepy red in the dorm rooms, the really kind of Nosferatu style shadows popping up all over the place. Can you walk me through some of those lighting choices and your thinking there?
Yeah, I was, those were very exciting to me. And I love color. I mean, I love vivid, vibrant colors, but what felt right for the film and for the space of the school overall was a very restrained color palette and a certain kind of subdued atmosphere that felt like this genteel perspective of the school, and that kind of very orderly and controlled. So Charlotte Hornsby, who is our DP, and I talked a lot about establishing that as the look of the film, but then there are these moments of these violent interruptions of very, very vivid, saturated crimson colors that for me are like, it's like a rupture in within the film and in the school where some of the blood that's that's churning underneath bubbles up to the surface, and it's at moments where the characters are in particularly vulnerable, either physically vulnerable or emotionally vulnerable places, and it just felt like this necessary interruption and this very evocative color space to play in as they're having these emotional moments.
Yeah, I love the idea of the rupture, and that makes so much sense. And it also, I mean, sticking with that, the aesthetics part of it, it strikes me that in these moments, and really throughout this movie, the camera roves as a sort of, I don't know, it has a humanistic aspect in that it's curious, but also seems to be terrified. You seem to have that push and pull. Were you thinking of the camera kind of as a character in that situation?
Yes, absolutely. And I'm so glad that you felt that, that something that felt important is that Ancaster itself be represented and be felt as a character in the film. And I think that, a lot of the camera is from this character perspective of the the And so I thought, I thought and had a lot of conversations with Charlotte about the framing and about the camera and, sort of sitting back in a lot of scenes and observing characters in an almost voyeuristic way. And then also, making use of slow zooms to give this, this feeling of stalking them and moving in on our characters with an ease, and a patience that you can imagine comes naturally to, many centuries old institution. It can take its time, it will catch up with the characters one way or another. So it felt important to represent that, photographically.
Yeah. Well, you touch on the characters, and that's I love transitions. And I think for my last question, I do just want to ask, with Zoe and Regina specifically, it seems like these actresses just gave themselves entirely over to this movie. So what was it like working with them on bringing these two to life?
It was amazing, and I think that I was so intimidated before I met Regina, having, known her work for, so much of my life. And she was like, she's so immediately warm and down to earth and kind. And that really, that really made me able to relax. And I think that it set the tone for everyone. And, so much so that I would forget, the significance of working with her because she just was such a regular person. And Zoe, is amazing. And like you said, I mean, threw herself into the role and was so incredibly giving with herself and gave so much to the performance and was so willing to try things out and really, push herself and explore different things and challenge herself. So we had a great time, and the broader ensemble as well, just working with so many amazing people. Amber Gray is,
Yeah.
so fun, such an amazing performer, and we would have these wonderful discussions, and so I felt really glad to be working with the team that I was.
Great. Well, thank you so much for talking about all of this, and best of luck with the festival screening and the whole launch. Can't wait for everyone to get to see this.
Thank you so much. It was great talking to you, and I appreciate your questions. They were so good.
Well, very happy to hear that. Have a great rest of your day.
You too.